This episode is brought to you by Gino's East, LA. Gino's East is one of Chicago's most famous deep dish pizza places. They've been open since 1966, and there are still some people who don't realize Gino's East is here in LA now too. And let me tell you, it feels like you're in Chicago when you're in there. I'm in there most every Friday for happy hour, and it feels like home. Home for us Chicagoans, and a friendly place for people who have never experienced Chicago to get a real feel and real taste for what it is that so many people rave about. I always have a difficult time deciding what to order at Gino's because there's so much great stuff on the menu. My go-to is probably the tavern pizza, cheese and sausage. But when I see someone next to me eating the deep dish, my mouth starts to water. Then I see the Italian beef with marinara, and I want to snatch it from the waiter's tray. Every friend I take there never leaves without feeling like they just experienced a meal in Chicago. They can't wait for me to invite them back, and I just tell them they can go there without me. Gino's East of Chicago in Los Angeles was named Best Pizza in the Southland by the LA Times readers 2 years in a row. There's half-price bottles of wine on Mondays and Tuesdays, lunch special every weekday, personal-sized 7-inch deep dish salad and a pop for $12.95. Italian beef, fries, and a pop for $12.95. That's pretty good. It's more than just a Chicago restaurant. It's one of the best restaurants in LA. Check out the friendly confines of Gino's East LA today on the corner of Coldwater Canyon and Riverside Drive, just off the 101. See you there on Friday sometime.
Sit back and relax. It's time for peanuts, popcorn, and Cracker Jacks.
Hey, how's it going? I'm your host, Jeff Santo, and I'm here with my wife, Christie.
Hello, hello.
So what's happening over there? I see you're looking at something.
Yeah, we got a wonderful letter from Matt Brown. He's a big fan of the show. He has a question. He wanted to know what football team your dad was a fan of. Was it the Bears? And did he have a favorite player?
Of course it was the Bears. As far as a favorite player goes, I would think, all those guys were friends. So, the Cubs and the Bears and the Bulls and the Blackhawks. So, he knew guys like Brian Piccolo and Gale Sears and Dick Butkus, and Mike Ditka was a very good friend of his. And also Bob Avellini. He was a quarterback for the Bears. My dad hung out with him and Bobby Douglas. So there's a lot.
Was that the players he liked to watch too, or just?
Well, they watched those teams. Those are quarterbacks, and those are guys that are important players on the Bears over the years. So he was a fan of the Bears, and I think he got along with all of them. I don't think my dad would have a favorite player per se because that's who he's hanging out with.
Yeah.
Right? They're his peers. So, but I had a favorite player.
Who's your favorite player?
Fran Tarkington, Fran the Man. I was a huge Vikings fan. Can you believe that? Growing up, I didn't like the Bears. Not that I didn't like the Bears. I just loved the Vikings, and my brother loved the Steelers. So we had different teams, and then we became Bears fans once we became teenagers.
And now you're a 49er fan, everybody.
Yes, I am. Yes, I'm still a Bears fan because there's the 85 Bears are the greatest football team that anyone has.
It sounds like you're a fan of the 85 Bears. Let's just leave it there.
Hey, everyone's a fan of the 85 Bears. I wanted to talk to you about regret today. And it just seems like, doing the show and going into the 69 season and my dad's story and the regret that, a lot of people have for that year the players and I think my dad too maybe wishes things went better. And I just started thinking about regret a lot because I'm thinking about my dad's journey and just feeling the stuff that, didn't come to fruition that he worked so hard to try for, the goals, winning a World Series, getting to a playoff game, and none of that ever happening, and the regret of the 1969 season when it went bad. There's just I look at regret, though, and it almost like it's a good thing when it becomes something that you reevaluate yourself on.
I agree, 100%. If you have regret and then just ignore it and move forward in your life, you're never going to evolve. If you look at, mistakes and as blessings, learn from them, grow from them, try not to do it again.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, the people who say, "Oh, I don't have any regrets," they're full of crap.
Well,
right?
I don't have any regrets.
Okay, you're full of crap.
I don't. I really don't, because all those mistakes led me to you.
That's so sweet to say, and I do believe you because you're that way. I'm not, right? So that's where my skepticism comes in.
I know, but it's
But-
like, yes, do I wish that I didn't get that perm when I was 16 years old? Yes, but
Oh,
I
come
mean,
on, a perm. There's a
but
lot.
it's not. I mean, it's not a make or break, big
Right.
deal kind of, regret. I mean, the big mistakes that I made in my life, I'm very, very thankful for that. I made it out alive.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true. I get that part of it, and I just feel like maybe today, not enough people regret their own stuff. I don't know, because it just feels that way. It's like, who you yelling at out there, man? Take care of your own crap. I just know. I just believe that you can't regret someone else's actions upon yourself. That if you're in the way of that, unless it's a crime, your choice is on you.
Take accountability and also have
Yeah.
forgiveness.
Yeah, but I also think like I have a lot of regret. I feel like and I've come to like embrace it. Like before, maybe I ignored it, or I was like, but I feel like that regret made me look deeper into myself and to who I am, and psychologically, that's a cool thing to do, is to discover more of like, where did things go bad with myself? Because really, regret is apologizing to yourself for not being better. I mean,
That's a nice way of looking at it.
Right? I mean, it kind of is. So I just feel like, now, the regret part of my life has molded me to be where I am today and feel the way I feel today, which is happy.
Yeah.
How's that?
And will we have future regrets or future mistakes?
Oh, of course.
Of course. And we will continue to try and be better.
Yeah, but I think that too, though, knowing that, having that in your mind, having that awareness about yourself, you have less regret moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're making choices
You
that
say that
are
to somebody who doesn't have any regret.
All right. Well, we work well together. Thank God we're walking forward together, because I could tell you the regret that I don't want to have, and you could say, well, that's not regret yet, and somehow we'll get past it.
You mean hypothesizing a future existence?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't even know what I just said. But so it is. Let's get to the show. It's a good one.
Enjoy.
This podcast is brought to you by Bernie's Tap and Grill. It's family owned and operated since 1954. Located across from Wrigley Field on Clark and Waveland. My dad hit a few home runs on the Waveland Avenue, and Bernie's was my dad's favorite place to go. It's got delicious food, 4 full-service bars, an awesome beer garden, a sidewalk patio cafe, and a cool upstairs area. It's the place I've always met my friends at before and after games. Go on by and tell Linda Dillman Jeff Santo sent you. Bernie's Tap and Grill, where you go when you go to Wrigley. My special guest today wrote my dad's acceptance speech into baseball's Hall of Fame. He started out selling hot dogs and beer as a vendor in ballparks and stadiums in Chicago, changing venues as the weather changed, from baseball to football to basketball to hockey, soaking up his love for sports the only way he could afford to do it, by working there. And like only persistent and determined dreamers can do, he changed his perspective from the outside to the inside, getting to know personally most of Chicago's greatest sports figures over the last half a century. He won Sports Writer of the Year in 2007. Working for the Daily Herald for almost 30 years, his sports columns were hard-hitting, intimate, and straightforward. I'm honored to call him my friend because he truly is. I'm talking about the great Barry Rozner. Thanks for coming on my show, man.
My pleasure, Jeff. I don't know how I can respond to an introduction like that. You're too kind, but I appreciate it very much. Hey, did you know, this is great, did you know that my vending uniform is in the Baseball Hall of Fame? Did you know that?
No, I did not. Tell me about that, man.
That's the most ridiculous thing ever. So I think it was the year of either Sandberg's or Dawson's induction, and it was late one night, and I was drinking. Of course, I was drinking with Jeff Idelson, who I believe was not yet the president of the hall, but at that point was
Right.
working at the hall. And we were talking about our vending days. He was a vendor in Boston. I was a vendor in Chicago. I said, yeah, I can believe this, but I still got a box of my stuff because my last day vending was the last game of the NLCS in 1984. Now, I didn't think that I had to turn in my stuff because I thought we were going to be back next week for the World Series, right?
Right.
So I had a whole box of stuff, everything, the buttons, the coin changer, the strap, the uniform. So I told Idelson, I got a box of this stuff. He's like, you should send it to us. I said, what for? He said, just send it to us. Maybe they'll want it for something. So I sent him a box. A year later, I get half of it back with a note saying, maybe we'll take your stuff for and we'll do something with it. So another year goes by, and I get a certificate that says your items have been accepted as a donation to the Baseball Hall of Fame. So I'm like, well, that's very interesting. I'm sure it'll be in the basement somewhere, and no one will ever see it. So then I think it was the year of Maddox going in that I was walking around at a party there on Saturday night, and I saw Jeff Idelson. I said, "Hey, whatever happened to that stuff?" He goes, "You haven't seen it?" I said, "No." So he takes me down a hallway to sort of an area where most people probably wouldn't walk or even see it. It was kind of connected two rooms, and there was a display case with my vending uniform.
Oh my
So,
God.
so I have made it to the Hall of Fame, Jeff. I made it.
You have in many ways, Barry. And that's what I want to get into. What I love about you is you participate meaningfully in other people's lives, man. You really do. You did that for my dad twice, and we'll get into that. But is that a superpower you were born with?
Oh,
Are you conscious of that? Like, were you conscious of like doing that?
No, I don't even honestly don't even know what you're talking about. I mean, I'll just say this. I'm fortunate to have had many, many great relationships
Mm-hmm.
in my life. And I don't know why those things happened. And I'm, you know, I try not to look back a lot. I don't know that there's anything great that comes of it. But when I do look back at my career, I mean, 37 years writing, and a couple of decades in radio and TV, and writing speeches for fun, just to help friends, and I helped a guy with a screenplay once, and just doing all these different things and having all these relationships. I just think that I'm really fortunate that I got to meet so many great people and call so many of them friends.
Yeah, man. There's something really special about it, though. Like these athletes, you know it, man. These superior athletes that you naturally bond with, right? Most of them are complicated as far as their motors run, right? They're all different, right? My dad, you could take Dawson, take Sandberg, take my dad. All three different, right? People
Very different,
of
very
how
different
they play the game and what motivated them. And here you are. You start as a vendor on the outside, as like a fan. That's how you're watching the sports, and then you get on the inside, and these guys accept you. So there's a quality there about your character that is superior, that they like and trust. And I feel it too, man. You got this way about you that you're just natural as far as like, hey, this is a good guy. I can trust him.
Well, I think there's a few things that go into being really good at your job if you're dealing with important people or famous people or people who are under extraordinary pressure every day. Obviously, I mean, the writing was easy for me. That part of it was easy for me. I think if I was ever good at anything, it was because I worked really hard. I played hockey for 40 years. I grew up in the game. I think it is the greatest teacher of life that you could ever come across. And everything about the game is determined by what you put into the game. So the harder you work in the game, the better you'll be. The more you prepare, the better you'll be. The more you show up, the better you'll be. You cannot cheat the game. So I think, you know, my I don't think it was a conscious thing. I worked really hard. When I was a vendor, I worked really hard. I think in my professional career, I worked really hard, and I think there was respect for that. And a lot of that was putting in the hours. I mean, they didn't show up an hour before the game. There's broadcasters who you probably know who never even went down on the field before a game to find out the stuff they needed for the broadcast. Well, I didn't show up an hour before the game. I was there 4 hours or 5 hours before a game. And that gives you that time to be with guys and for them to get to know you and for you to get to know them. And a lot of times you didn't even pull the notepad out. A lot of times it was just conversation. Now that's personality. Okay. A lot of people. Many more than I do, who are really important in the business, especially in Hollywood. And a lot of those people have no personality and they rub people the wrong way.
Right.
And it is hard to get to know people. Well, in journalism, it's the same thing, or broadcast or whatever it is. I mean, if you don't have personality and you can't find a way to talk to a guy, and like you said, they're all different. You can't find a way to talk to a guy and make them believe that you are just a decent guy trying to do a job and you're not there to hurt them, but you also got to do your job, which means some days you're not going to be as nice as other days.
Right.
It's about respect. I remember one time Sandberg made an error and it ended some ridiculous 150 game errorless streak or something like that, and we all came in afterward, and one of the writers was saying, we were fighting for you. We didn't think it was an error. And I looked around. I was like, I wasn't fighting for anybody. I mean, that's not my job, not the official score. And his response was, no, it was an error. And that was the end of the conversation. These guys just want to be treated with respect. That's the main thing. They didn't particularly love sarcasm or cheap shots.
Right.
If they were having, they also didn't want to be misquoted or have something taken out of context. Your dad and I had a lot of conversations about that. I'm sure we'll get to that a little bit later.
Right.
But so I think the big thing was treat guys with respect. Be a good person, work hard, and you'll be treated well. The other thing is I was fortunate enough to develop good relationships with the biggest names on the team. And if you get those guys, then chances are you'll get everybody else. But I believed in working the whole room. You're in spring training and there's 100 guys hanging around, and you might one day talk to a guy who's going to show up in June when nobody thought he was ever going to get called up, but injuries, whatever. So he might be the 30th or 35th guy on the roster, but in June he's number 25. And he might be starting at third base a week later. So, if you ignore the guys you think that don't matter, they're going to ignore you when they show up eventually. So my belief was talk to everybody, try to get to know people, develop relationships, and if I was successful because of that, I don't know that there was any magic to it. I appreciate very much your sentiments. I just think it was hard work and being a decent person.
Yeah, there's no shortcuts, and being a decent person is everything. And I know that's to my dad. My dad's all about character. You know him. And
your dad was all about character, and he knew I was putting in the work, and he respected that.
Yep. And going from did you have a plan, like when you were vending, like I'm not going to be here, I'm going to be down there? Did you know that?
No, I never had any kind of a plan. I went to college. I changed my major 5 times. It's what I always wanted to do. It's just everybody told you can't make a living in journalism. So it really wasn't my intention to do that. And then at some point, maybe sophomore year, I woke up and said, you know what? I can't wear a suit every day. I can't do something that I don't want to do. So I changed my major again, went into journalism. And it just so happens that in 1984, my last year vending was the year that I graduated, and I had been working part-time at a couple of newspapers, and I had interviewed at the Daily Herald. And the day after the Cubs lost to San Diego in 84, the Daily Herald called me back and said, yeah, we want to hire you. We had just been waiting till the playoffs were over. So,
Wow.
I don't, I think nothing in life replaces hard work. There is nothing more important than that. You do have to have a little bit of luck, though, from time to time. And I guess I was lucky that I got hired. I don't know why they hired
Well,
me. Maybe they liked the writing I did in college, or maybe they liked some of the part-time work I had been doing, or maybe they just liked my personality, but they hired me.
right. So you did have a plan. Your sophomore, yeah, you had a plan. See, to
I
figure it
don't
out
know.
that early, you figured it out. No, you were in the arena. You got yourself in the arena. You were working on a skill. That's a plan, man. So, and then there's always, yeah, like you said, there's a little luck or maybe a lot of luck, but it also the luck has to do with yourself being there and working hard. There are no shortcuts, like you said, and I think these guys know that. Like, and if you try and give a dig to a player, or an athlete, or whoever, they know what you're trying to do. They know if you're trying to give a cheap shot. They've been around the block, so they figure that stuff out quickly. So you can't get in and think, oh, I'm going to get a great story by ripping this guy, because you won't last, right?
There's also a way to ask a question. I mean, you can look if I said this before, if a guy makes an error or throws a bad pitch or gives up the game-winning home run, he doesn't expect you the next day to say that was a great pitch. It was just bad luck. It wasn't. It was a bad pitch. They don't mind that. They don't mind the truth. Uh, what they don't like are, like I said before, they don't like what's not true. They don't like what's out of context. They
Right.
don't like being misquoted. They don't like cheap shots. They don't mind the truth. There's never. I mean, I every one of the names that I've mentioned so far, I've criticized all of those guys in print over the years. None of them had a problem with that. As long as it's fair and it's not a cheap shot,
Yep.
they
Yep.
don't care.
Yep.
There's also a way to ask a question, Jeff. You don't walk in after the game and say, I mean, you're talking what, 10, 11 minutes after the pitch was thrown? There's been really virtually no time to cool down before they open the doors.
Yeah.
They haven't even had a beer yet. And the first thing you say is, wow, what were you thinking? That ball went a long way, or something like that. I
Right.
mean, you better be, I mean, unless you're really good friends with it. I could have said that to Paul Ossenmacher. I could have said, did you think after the first 5 curveballs you might have mixed in a different pitch after that before Cal Daniels hit it on to Sheffield? I could have said that to him, but most guys, they're not going to want to hear that right after the game. So there's a way to ask a question without offending a guy. But I just think, look, we were all single at one point. We all, were out there on the market trying to get ahead, as it were.
Yep.
And there's a way to go about it. And it takes personality, and it takes skill, and it takes
Absolutely.
an effort to be human and decent. And those skills are very much the same in a locker room. What you would if you were trying to meet a girl in a bar, it's very much the same thing in a locker room. You choose your words carefully, you behave well, you
Right.
you do the right things, and you got a decent chance to be accepted. You act like a turd, and you're going to be treated like a turd.
Yep. Yep, man. And I gotta say, when it came to my dad, there's two times when he was interviewing for being on the WGN radio team. He was nervous, man. Boy, he was nervous. He was out of his element for himself. Like, you put him on a baseball field, he's not scared of anything. But
Right.
you were right there, and you helped him through that process. Talk about how he felt about that.
Well, the only thing the main thing that I said was, if you're going to get hired, you're going to get hired because you're a huge fan of the team. You're going to get hired because you know the game better than anybody else, and you're emotional. So be all of those things. So essentially, he said, so just be me. I said, yes, be you. That's all. That's what they want. They're not talking to you because they are looking for someone who's going to have their nose in Baseball Reference or in the metrics or in something else. They want you to be you. So that's really the only thing I ever said was be emotional, be yourself. And who was more emotional than him? in everything, whether he was getting a cup of coffee or at the blackjack table. Who was more emotional doing anything than your dad?
He was motion in emotion. That's how he moved, man. Right. And also that's part of that was what people held against him too at times.
Well, I mean, but you are what you are.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Like, I remember a guy said to me once, we were winning a game. This is a beer league game. I'm 40 something years old. It's a beer league game. We're winning 7-1 with, a minute and a half left. And I dove to block a shot and limped off the ice. And he's like, "What's wrong with you?" And I said, "No, the question is, what's wrong with you?" I said, "That's how we play. That's the only way I know how to play. So that's how I play. What you wouldn't block a shot in the first period when it's no score. So that's a stupid question. So, we are what we are.
Yep.
Your dad was emotional with you. He was emotional with me. Believe me, you don't think we had some knockdown dragouts? I mean, they didn't last very long, but you don't think there were times
Oh yeah.
when he and I went back and forth? Um, it's who he is. I mean, it's who he was. But
Right.
when I told him that, I said, "This is who you are. Just be who you are." Um, and in a locker room after a game, yes, Ron Santo was emotional. On the field, someone threw a pitch at his head. You think he wasn't going to be emotional?
Yeah.
But we are what we are. We are a product of what we know. We are a product of how we were brought up or not brought up, in your dad's case. We are a product of the environment that we know best when it matters the most. And that's our formative years. So, I won't get into my life, but I'll just tell you that, I had to fight my ass off
Yep.
every day of my life. And maybe that's one of the reasons that your dad and I, became so close, became like, I want to say like brothers, but it was probably more like father and son,
Right.
really.
Yeah.
Let's be
Absolutely.
honest.
Yeah.
But
100%.
But his life story, I'm sure people on this podcast have heard it 1,000 times, but his life story tells you everything you need to know
Mm-hmm.
about everything he ever did in his life. And growing up the way he did, and being diagnosed when he was, and you can pretend that you leave those things behind, but you really never do. They're with you every day of your life, and they are the foundation for why you behave the way you do, for better and worse. What made him a Hall of Fame baseball player were those things. What made him fun for Cub fans to listen to as a broadcaster were those things. What also made him disliked by some people were those same
Yeah.
things. And that's just too damn bad.
Yeah.
Okay. If
Yeah.
you don't, if you're not playing to win, or if you're not working hard, or if you're not bringing it every single day to whatever you're doing, then, he's not going to be accepting of that. And you're probably going to hear about it. And if you don't want to hear about it, then you know what? Do your job. Just do your job. And then you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, so true, man. I mean, he was a product of his life, and I've said that for when I started the show. I mean, I've since he's passed, I've even I dove deeper into the psychology of my father. You know what I mean? You have to because you're part of him, right? I have a lot of his traits, but I'm not Ron Santo, right? So I can't get away with the stuff that sometimes he can because he showed on the baseball field. And sometimes, people say, "Oh, you're too emotional." Well, I've had that thrown my way, and it's like, well, tell my dad that. Like, you're too emotional to hit a baseball.
Yeah.
No, he's not too emotional to hit a baseball. He's not too emotional to lead the league in walks. There's so much that goes to it. The emotion that it pushed him forward in life. Literally, it was what he was. You take that out of him, you take that passion emotion, then he's not Ron Santo.
Yeah,
Gone.
and it'd be the same for you. I
Yeah.
mean,
Mhm.
if the reason you've succeeded in life, and the reason you're still succeeding and you will succeed more, is because of that unbelievable passion you have for these projects. And where does that come from? You don't just you don't make it up. It doesn't just happen. It's who you are. And it's a product of what you knew with your father. Now, there's time and a place, and we all sometimes say the wrong thing or
Yep.
do the wrong thing or maybe get too emotional at certain times, but that's what makes us who we are, and you can't try to deny that. You just have to apologize for it once in a while.
Yeah. You do, man, and knowing yourself, like I think when he went into the broadcast booth, and why I bring you up in that moment, because he told me about it, man, and I knew you were with them, and you guys drank some beers, you guys had a night, and that kind of stuff. My dad remembers because he knows when he's in a position that he's not too comfortable in. Like you say, yourself. You're like, well, I'm not used to this, I can do whatever I can do on a baseball field, but I got to go up in this booth and they're listening to me, right? And that piece of advice that you gave him, that's who he became in the booth.
Well, I think it would have happened anyway. I think even if I had never said it, it would have happened anyway. He was with two terrific guys.
Yeah,
I mean, Tom Brenneman, to me, is one of the great broadcasters of all time. And Bob Brenly is just as good a guy as you'd ever want to be around. I mean, how lucky was I to be around all those guys, right? I mean, we had a group. I mean, me and your dad and Tommy and Brenly and Coletti and sometimes Harry and sometimes players would show up, but we had a group and we were out a lot and we had some times. I mean, the most legendary might be the first night we all went out together in 1990. I'll spare you some of the details of that story.
Is this the first time you met him? When did you meet my dad? Actually met him?
Oh, probably a year or two before that.
Okay.
But really didn't know him that well. And that first night in spring training, 1990, when we all went out together, it was a slugfest. It was a painful night. And the next morning, which was also a very painful morning, I come walking in. I think I was the last one in the dugout at about, I don't know, 7:30 or 8 o'clock. And it was all the guys I just mentioned, plus Don Zimmer. And I'm wearing sunglasses. And Zimmer says, let's see, pick them up. Let's see the eyes. Raise the sunglasses.
Mm-hmm.
And I raised the sunglasses, and he goes, yeah, you too. And he used a couple foul words that he was very fond of. And obviously, they had all been in the dugout talking about it already. And your dad, everybody's sitting there, and your dad looks at me and says, were you there last night? And Brenneman says, he drove you home, Ron. He virtually carried you to the car and drove you home last night. Was he there? And your dad felt, I mean, and we laughed hysterically till we cried about it. But that sort of became a famous thing. Were you there? Was a thing that we said almost every day.
That's great.
For decades after that. But that sort of started it. I mean, yeah, we had a lot of conversations about the broadcasting, sure, and he was asking for advice a lot. But that was a big part of it. And then I think he just watched me work, and he read the stories, and he knew I was getting stories other guys weren't getting, and he watched me, and he knew I was there early and leaving late, and he knew that there were guys talking to me, Sandberg as an example, who, certainly weren't that outgoing with other people, and I think he was just fascinated by how that came to be, and but more than anything, he appreciated the hard work, so. It was a phenomenal relationship that lasted, obviously, until the day he died. And I would call it a word I would use to describe your dad was unconditional.
Mm.
Everything about him was unconditional. His love, his friendship, his brotherhood, his passion, everything was unconditional. And, once you were his guy, then you were his guy. And I mean, I really felt like we were brothers all of those years.
Yeah, when did he want you to, when did you start talking to him about the Hall of Fame? Because it seemed like he always wanted you to write his acceptance speech in the baseball's Hall of Fame. And obviously he didn't make that moment, but you still wrote it for his wife, Vicky, and it was beautiful. How did that start and percolate?
I don't remember the first time he brought it up. We talked about the Hall of Fame so much because it was a passion of mine to try to explain to people everywhere I went that you are really missing this. And I won't bore you with it. This morning I went and looked up some of the old things I wrote about the statistics. It's ridiculous. I mean,
Mhm.
you know it all, and everybody who listens to this already knows it all, so I won't get into it. But basically, at the time he went in, uh, obviously he was no longer with us, but at the time that he was inducted, he was like the third best third baseman in the history of the Hall of Fame at that point. I mean, it's absurd that I'm sorry. It just made it.
Yeah,
I'm
he was.
still bitter. Do I
No,
sound bitter?
I
Because
mean,
I'm
no,
still
it's
bitter.
great. He, literally, like when I did this old Cub going into my dad's career, I grew up. Me and Ronnie were on the field. We're kids. He's our dad, right?
Yeah.
But then when you really explore his play at third base, it's amazing, man. The amount of assists and total chances and double plays and how he played there. And I mean, I was listening to during COVID a broadcast, a national broadcast, and it blew me away of just hearing the plays he made, on radio that they were raving about. And so I was just like, yeah, he really he was that good.
I'll get back to your question in just a second, but I want to read you a couple of things just
Sure.
briefly. When he got in, he was third among Hall of Fame third basemen in home runs, third in Gold Gloves, fourth in walks, fifth in RBIs, and sixth in hits. At an underrepresented position. Okay, so I mean, what are we? That's ridiculous
Yeah.
that we even have to talk about this. During his career, so the years he played, he ranked fifth in RBI among all players.
Amazing.
The entire top 10, okay, he was fifth. The entire top 10 were all in the Hall. 9 were in the Hall of Fame. He was the only one that wasn't. He's one of only 2 third basemen ever to have more than 300 home runs and 5 Gold Gloves. The other was Schmidt, obviously first ballot, 96%. And if WAR, you want metrics. If WAR is your determination, Ron was 93rd all time at that time when he was inducted, and the only third baseman ahead of him were Schmidt, Eddie Matthews, Wade Boggs, George Brett, Brooks Robinson, and Chipper Jones. They were all in the Hall of Fame except Chipper, who was going to be very shortly. So, I could read you 50 more. I mean, the numbers among his peers during just take the 1960s or from 1960 to 1974. He's up there with with Aaron and Mays in every category.
Right. Yeah.
It's absurd. I
Like
mean,
for 10 years. Yeah.
so
yeah.
it's nuts. But he was a victim of not having played on national TV. He was a
Mhm.
victim of having been dropped off the ballot when he shouldn't have been. And by the time he got back on, the people voting didn't even know who he was. It probably never heard his name before. So, all those things contribute. Anyway, we used to talk about it a lot. I used to write about it a lot. I used to talk to other writers and broadcasters about it a lot. And, I would say the first time we ever talked about the speech was probably after Sandberg went in, because he obviously knew, not that it was something that anybody publicized, but he figured out that I had written Sandberg's Hall of Fame
Mhm.
speech. And he said, if I ever get in, I want to get in, and I want you to write it. Of course, he also said, if they do it after I'm gone, uh, they can have it. They can keep it. I don't want it.
Emotional
That's something that
response
sticks.
there.
That's something that sticks with me. I'm still bitter about it, but anyway, I said, of course I will do it. Well, it'll be, we'll have a good time, and then, once it happened, Vicky called me and said, I know Ron wanted you to do it, so I'd like you to do it. So, I did it for your dad because, that's what he would have wanted.
How'd you go about that, Barry? The process of figuring out what you're going to say. I mean, that's a huge moment for. I mean, you did it for Sandberg, you did it for Dawson. The biggest moments in a ball player's life, and you're writing that. How do you then do it for someone like my dad who's not here?
I'd have to go back and read what I wrote, to find the hook. I'm not going to pretend there's some crazy process, or you know,
Right.
I'm not a screenwriter or I
Yeah,
mean,
but
I've written a lot of things in my life. I don't really know process. I just know it's sort of like putting together a puzzle in my mind. Like Sandberg's was easy. I wrote Sandberg's in 15 minutes on the plane coming back from Cooperstown after we had gone there in April that year for a preview session. I wrote the whole thing.
wow.
Took me 15, 20 minutes. I mean, it was
So
easy as
it's
can be.
like writing a
Dawson's
song. It comes in your head. It's got to hit you.
the more, I'm fascinated by songwriting,
Yeah,
something I know
me too.
nothing about, but
Yep.
I watch people talk about it. I think it's very similar.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really very similar. Um, but uh, I I I think when it came to your dad, I was probably so the first thing you have to do is you have to be in the voice of the person who's going to be speaking. It's not your voice. You're writing for somebody else who's going to be speaking. And so that's the first thing. The second thing is I had to think about what would he want said if he could play a role in putting this together. And so that's what I did. And I didn't think um, it had anything to do with diabetes. I didn't think it had anything to do with his broadcasting career. He was going into the Hall of Fame because he was the third best third baseman at that time in the history of baseball, and that's why he was going in. And so I didn't want it to be about any of those things. And so again, I'd have to go back and read it to find out why I did some of the things I did. But I'm sure I was looking for a hook and something that would grab people,
Mm-hmm.
and make them feel what Ron was feeling when he could still feel the anticipation of going in. Um, I don't remember too much about it because I didn't watch it. I didn't go.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to go because I was mad, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
still mad.
Yep. Yeah.
Um, and I didn't watch it because I was mad, and I'm still mad. So I know that it was very well accepted
It
and that people liked it, and I'm glad about that. But I'm still bitter.
Yeah, and I get that, man. I get that. I get that. And from my where I stand, I know that my dad's glad he's there. He's glad that he's in the hall now. Like for the grandkids, Sam and Spence, for me and Ronnie and everyone and Linda who, you know, wanted it for him so bad, and all the fans that wanted it for him so bad. I'm glad he's there. It feels
So
good. Now, was
so am I.
something missing when we were there? Absolutely, it was him, right? I
Yeah.
mean, no doubt about it. What it would have been like if he was on the stage. I mean, wow, right? With his two prosthetic legs and his cane and everything that got him there. I mean, the journey that he had was a fight from day one. Right when his dad left him, he fought all the way to the big leagues and all the way to the Hall of Fame.
I know that he wouldn't have wanted any sympathy. I
Hmm.
know that he wouldn't have wanted anybody to look at him differently. I know that he wouldn't have wanted um, anybody to cry for him. I know he would have wanted everyone to celebrate and be happy. So I hope that's the tone that I took. Honestly, I don't remember. I should have read
Oh, it
that.
was beautiful, man.
I
You did a great job, and
I should have I
you
should
did
have
a
read it
nice job
before.
giving it, and so it worked out, man. And my dad, I'll tell you right now, talking to Linda, my sister, yeah, he would have loved it. He was perfect. It did the job, man. It was great.
Uh,
It more than did the job, and you know, yeah, it was tough, and I still feel that at times. But I'm just so happy he's there because it just shows. I could say now, like I'm not people are like, oh, who's your dad? I'm like, I'm like Ron Santo, like.
yeah,
Who did he play? Was he he's a Hall of Famer, and
yeah.
and some people don't know him because you're not in Chicago, but it's great for us to say, man. I gotta say, I mean, I love saying I can't believe my dad's a Hall of Famer. I mean,
Yeah,
because you don't really know him so well, right? You could just picture him in front of you,
yeah,
and how he was so humble in just how he lived, his personality. It wasn't like he boasted about his stuff, right? So even when he clicked his heels in '69, it wasn't out of like him. It was because pure joy.
yeah.
And let's go there with '69. I know you talked a lot with him about the season. Tell me some of the conversations.
Well, I went and found it after you called me the other day. I wrote a piece about it in April 22nd, 1990 was so it was our first trip. That's when it published. I think a few days before that, we had been at Shea Stadium, and that was his first time back at Shea Stadium
Yeah.
since he retired. And so I said, let's go sit in the visitors' locker room. So during BP, nobody in the clubhouse. He walked into the visitors' clubhouse at Shea Stadium for the first time since he retired. And we sat in chairs, and for a while, not saying a lot, just looking around. I could see him thinking and remembering. And then we had a conversation about what it was like to be back, what he remembered, all the things that occurred. And you could see it was painful. You could always see with him the pain, not the physical pain. The man endured more than who was that? The Black Knight from Monty Python? Is that who? Is that who that was? The man endured so much pain, physical pain, and I never saw him complain. I would just call him a medical marvel, and we would move on. But you could see the pain when it came to the Hall of Fame, when it came to 1969, when it came to, he was a humble person, and a humble person doesn't go looking for recognition. However, a humble person who hasn't gotten the recognition they deserve is going to hurt from that. Okay? None of us wants to go seeking it. None of us wants to. I mean, I have boxes and boxes full of the awards that I won. I mean, dozens and dozens of them during my career. Do I care about them? Not really. Am I glad I won them? Yes. I'm glad I won them. I deserve to win them. Would it have changed my life if I didn't? No. Would I have gone looking for the credit if I hadn't gotten it? No. But I would have felt disrespected, and I would have felt like I wasn't getting the recognition that I deserve. So, and I consider myself to be pretty humble. You can be a humble person and still feel pain. And I always saw that in his eyes when he didn't understand why he wasn't well received among the greatest of the baseball community. I saw Andre Dawson go through the same thing. He had to wait 9 years. He had to wait 9 years because steroids swallowed up the 10 years after his career ended. It was nothing, and all the numbers that he produced suddenly didn't mean that much. I saw the pain in his face, believe me. And that's a humble guy. But even a humble guy can feel pain if he's not getting the recognition he deserves. And I always saw that in your dad's eyes. And the first time I really saw it was that day at Shea Stadium when we were sitting in that locker room. And we talked about the Hall of Fame, and we talked about his career, and we talked about 1969 and how everything would have been different if 1969 had ended in a World Series championship. Everything would have been different. There isn't a play Brooks Robinson ever made that Ron Santo couldn't make. Ron Santo I'm thinking, except for maybe Nolan Arenado, I would say Ron Santo is the best defensive third baseman I ever saw. Now, how many people know that? Who did, outside of the people who are going to Wrigley Field every day or watching them on WGN? Right. So, I mean, you could see that when he talked about 69, it was painful because there were so many ways that it affected his life after that. And among them was the recognition that he never got. Obviously, we talked about Don Young and those other things, but I think that I think you could point to that season as the season that would have changed everything in his life. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe he never would have become a broadcaster. I don't know. Who knows what all would have been different if that season had gone the way it should have.
Yeah, you're right. And it affected our family. It really did. Because, hey, he his heart was on his sleeve. So we all lived with it. And again, he didn't complain. It wasn't like he was going around complaining about 69, but it was, you look back at everything and how the Cubs DeRocher came in '66 and how they were leading up there. And they had a team before even DeRocher until Kenny Hubbs got killed, right? And, those pieces were coming together. But for playing on a losing team for so long and playing with Ernie, and he came to Chicago for Ernie and Wrigley and picked the Cubs for a certain reason. And then, him, Billy, and Ernie played for, that was like their 10th season together going into '69. And they were still young, 29, because these guys came up so early. And he wanted it so bad. And I think that season was filled, and I was young and I remember it. It was filled with a lot of joy. So much was going on. Such a big moment for Chicago. We've talked about it. Everyone knows that. But when it ended, I do think you're right. It's a different life. But then you go, okay, but what came out of that? He became a broadcaster because of maybe that. So you just can't say, okay, it could have been different. It wasn't. It didn't happen. But there were things in that season, the team itself. He talks about that. He wasn't going to sit, but did DeRocher work these guys too hard? What was the reason for the collapse? They had a team. What was it? Was it psychologically? Did they lose?
No, I mean, I think it's legit when you talk about day baseball at Wrigley. That was a very hot summer. I mean, I'm a little young to, to speak on it as though I can remember the weather.
Right.
But when you read about it, it was a very hot summer. I think they did wear out, but who among any of those guys would have said, "Take me out of the lineup," or "I want to sit today," especially when things started going bad? Think any of them are going to say, "No, I need to sit today, and we need to win a game today." So they also didn't have the depth maybe that that the Mets did. So I don't know. In hindsight, yeah, those guys should have gotten some time off. That's hindsight.
Right.
At the time, and again, I'm too young to remember the season like I really could remember any of the last 20 or 30 or 40. Just too, I was just too young, but they probably should have gotten some breaks. It probably did have an impact. They probably were exhausted, but the part that rarely gets talked about is how well the Mets played down the stretch.
Yeah.
I mean, what they go? I mean, the Cubs' record wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad.
92 wins, but they were 10. They were 10 games in first place on August 15th, right? Just before Then once Woodstock happened, oh, here we go. The rains came, right? I mean, literally the turnaround going from up 10 to like down 8 at the final game of the season. That's a huge. That showed you how good the Mets were.
Well, the Mets won 35 out of their last 49. Okay, I mean,
yeah.
Even if the Cubs have played really well, they're getting caught and they're getting passed.
Yeah.
I mean, so that part of it doesn't get talked about that much.
Let me talk about this.
Yeah.
Did you guys talk about the Don Young game?
We talked about it numerous times. Of course, he had some regret about being so emotional about it. I also always felt like he thought that none of that should have come out, that stuff should have all been kept in the locker room. And that, I can't prove it, but I had the feeling he thought that he was just talking to somebody, and that those quotes weren't on the record. It was either that or it was out of context. I don't remember exactly, but I know
both by two different writers. Yeah, one was definitely out of context. He never said Don Young blew the game. That never would happen.
I know he was emotional in the room.
Yeah,
I absolutely believe that he thought that Don Young was in his head over his hitting and wasn't fully dialed in the outfield. And I would absolutely believe it if it were true that he were upset after the game that those balls weren't. I think there were two, weren't there? Two that those two balls weren't caught.
One was a kind of a tough catch, but he had it in his glove. But the first one,
I remember the running catch that he dropped. That was a tough catch, but he did have it. I believe he would have been upset about that. I believe he would have been emotional. I even believe he would have called him out. I also believe that an hour later he would have apologized for it. And I know he did apologize later, but I don't believe that he meant for any of that to get out of the clubhouse. And that not only destroyed Don Young by, whatever was printed, not only did it destroy Don Young, but it took a big chunk out of Ron Santo too,
It sure
because
did.
that stayed with him
Whole life.
forever,
Yeah, forever.
forever.
And then the death threats came, and there were just it was tough, man. And I look at that now. I told you this. I have a TV series in development called Blue Collar Famous about my dad's story that we're developing with Bonnie Hunt, and I've been at this for a while. And I'm really exploring that moment. I'm exploring a moment where my dad's character was challenged, literally challenged in front of everyone, and that moment of the portrait of the baseball player, because he truly was a portrait of a baseball player.
Yeah.
From where he hung out at a baseball state minor league, he worked there from 10 years old to 18, being the clubhouse boy at the AAA stadium in Seattle at Six Stadium, and how everything, the diabetes, how he kept it a secret and just kept moving forward and wanted to win with Ernie and all that, and finally getting on the big stage, and then it falling apart. And I think he was just really upset that Don Young had his head down and was going to quit, right? Basically,
Yeah.
That's where he got upset, and that was just himself going, "How can you feel this way? We're here." And that was just, again, you got a rookie in a situation where maybe he shouldn't have been there, right? And nothing against Don Young. Don Young's only going to do what Don Young can do. So, but you're right. It tore at two people there, and it wound up psychologically maybe affecting the team down the stretch. Who knows? But it's a moment in his life that I feel like you talk about something, you take something out of someone's life, and that's the moment where it's like it was unfair, and that's why he fought against it, and it bothered him the rest of his life because that was at the most important time of his life in his baseball career.
Yeah, and he, look.
One thing I just want to put up that I didn't say to you, and we talked about this earlier, is that my dad's passion, that's what I'm exploring, because like we've talked about here, he was a very emotional man, probably the most emotional man a lot of ball players have been around. All the guys talk about that, Billy
Certainly.
and Beck, and Beck knew how to handle his emotion, but no one can say he didn't go out there and give 100% and went out to every time. He also celebrated other people all the time. Billy Williams talked about that. My dad was the first guy to celebrate someone else.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what I'm exploring is the passion of a man, because so many today it's relevant. You look at, is that toxic? Well, if it's making the man who he is, how is that toxic, right? It's for the person that might not be working as hard, or like you were talking about. So that's what I'm exploring in Blue Collar Famous, and then obviously what makes the man who he is, and everyone's different.
Yeah, well, we live in a very soft world where meritocracy is dead, and I would imagine that there are people who wouldn't be able to understand why someone would yell at a guy in a clubhouse who says he's going to quit and tell him, well, then if you're going to quit, get out.
Right.
I could see how in today's world that, that'll not only get you fired, it'll get you canceled, and it'll maybe get you shipped off to another country. I don't know what everybody does today, but this is a man who wanted to win. He was a good teammate.
Yeah, sure was.
He was a good teammate. He cared about his teammates. Like you just said, he celebrated his teammates. It wasn't about him. He wanted to win. The man walked 100 times a year in the best era of pitching ever. Okay? Today, that's celebrated walking. Well, a selfish player isn't going to take those walks.
Right.
He wanted to win. That's what he was about, was winning. Was he emotional? Yes. Did he sometimes maybe cross the line? Possibly. But that's the reason he's in the Hall of Fame. So you tell me what you're supposed to do. You tell me you can't have it both ways. Okay? The reason he's in the Hall of Fame is because of who he was. An emotional guy who was really good at his job and cared and wanted to win. So you want to criticize him for that? Well, then he's not in the Hall of Fame. Okay? Yeah. I mean, you can't have it both ways.
Yep. And yeah, that's, I think my dad questioned himself sometimes on like, okay, why did I do that? Or I don't know. I'm just thinking like how I might think, like, he went and apologized. He did. And he was very sincere about his apology, even though he thought he shouldn't have to when it hit him, right? He's like, but then he's like, oh man, if someone's hurting from this, I don't want that to be.
Yeah.
But that was who he was, and he never got the win. He never got the World Series. He never got to the Hall of Fame. So, that pain stuck with him. But he loved his Cubs, and I really do believe him getting in the broadcast booth and having a second chance at it as far as being part of a World Series, and that didn't happen. Was tough, but that season, and that's why I'm exploring it, because psychologically, I just love how my dad was able to really deal with the agony of defeat in his life, and not too many people can.
I can't wait to see it. I mean, I can't wait to see how deep you dig and how far it goes. When you're around someone for a very long time, there's a lot more there. Even when you think you know someone really, really well, there's a lot more there. I'm sure my girls think they know me really, really well. I'm never going to talk about the bad stuff that happened in my life or the stuff. This, I mean, they know there's bad stuff, and you do have to talk about bad stuff because they got to learn from that and how you survive and how you get better from it and how you overcome. I'm talking about stuff from like my childhood. I'm never going to talk about that stuff.
Right.
I mean,
yeah. No. And he never
so I
did.
mean, you
Right.
think you know somebody really well and how it forms them and all that. And there's always more there. So I can't wait to see how
Yeah.
how far you're able to dig.
Yeah. He didn't talk about his dad much to us, right? And I never met his real dad, right? He left at when he was 8, and his stepdad became like his real dad because, as my dad stated it, John, the stepdad, never criticized him. Always, never went there. And what's ironic is that his real dad, taught him baseball, brought him to his first game at Six Stadium, right?
Yeah.
And then and had that passion, was a strong guy, and I never met him, right? Ronnie, and right when he was in his 70s, he was dying. We were at my dad's house, and my dad called him and had us talk to him.
Wow.
And it was like, I'm like, wow, man, this was his dad. We don't even know him.
Wow.
And so that to me became like, especially again after he passed, I'm like, that's such. And do you know that his dad, he made it into the bigs in 1960, where he thought he was going to make it out of spring training, as you know, and then they sent him down, and he came up midway through, and that season they went to L.A. No, they went to San Francisco, and his mom and his stepdad John came down to watch him from Seattle, and so did his sister Adeline. And his dad showed up to the stadium with his new wife. Haven't seen him since 8 years old. He gets a freaking note saying your real dad's here. And can you imagine that moment? He goes out and he talks to him before the game, and I'm just imagining what that was like for him, man. And then to go back and then to see him, to greet him, and then to say, that's it. See you later. You're part of my life, man. And then to go out and play. What the hell?
No, I cannot imagine. I don't know if I know that story. Maybe I do.
He didn't talk about it much. So I got that from my aunt. She was there, So as soon as he left, he was like, he's out, man. I mean, he was like, you're out at 12 years old. You ain't coming back,
I don't know if I knew that story.
Yeah.
It could have been one of those 3:00 in the morning stories.
Yeah.
When we were really talking about. Sometimes
we
we
didn't
got
bring
pretty.
that up much, man. That's a tough one because you can look at how come you didn't embrace them. Well, come on, and that's what. And I had this conversation with Randy Huntley where Randy and my dad would go at it a lot, right? Different people, right? Randy's a country boy, my dad's a city boy, but the difference is, and I don't think people put 2 and 2 together on him so much, is that Randy's dad, really taught him the game and guided into the big leagues. The one-handed catching, that's beautiful when a father can take you and guide you like that. Well, my dad's the opposite. My dad's dad leaving him was his motivation, was his fuel. So he accepts back. Maybe that fuel goes away, right? I'm like, you're saying, all right, come on. Who knows? It's psychologically that's a tough thing to like figure out.
And what kind of a guy shows up in that moment and does that?
Right.
I mean,
there you go, man. There you go. And the difference
unbelievable.
for my dad to not be his dad, where you can slip into taking the bad traits from your father. And
Well,
that's the road that my dad could have slipped off into many a times if it wasn't for his mother Vivian and his sister Adeline, who gave him so much love and support.
I know people from similar circumstances who, like you said, become terrible parents
Yep.
and live terrible lives. And also people from those circumstances who decide, no, I won't say decide, who are so affected that they never really achieve in life, or don't try to, or just
Right.
I don't mean this to be critical, because people go through terrible things and not everybody survives and not everybody overcomes. And this is not to be critical. It's just some people don't survive it, or they don't overcome it, and they just kind of glide through life trying to just get by and just trying to live. And I get it. I understand it. Your dad didn't do those things.
No.
The bad things that happened to him became the reasons that he succeeded in life, and not just in baseball, in business, where he was very
Yeah.
successful.
It's one of those things, like, and I look at it too, not getting to the World Series, not getting to where he wanted to get in his career as a ball player, as far as a team sport, winning the whole thing, right? That was huge for him. Not even him and Ernie never even saw a playoff game, right? Just
Incredible.
so crazy.
Incredible.
But to still, through all of that, to joke about himself, like, he took a lot of razzing from everyone, and knew how let people kid with him. I mean, I saw that in This Old Cub. I put it in This Old Cub, right, with Steve Stone and Chip would always razz him, and it was good fun, right? But what was percolating down deep, though, was some serious stuff, right? Like,
Yeah.
literally, and I know you wrote a book with Steve on Harry, and you wrote a couple of books. We haven't even talked about that one on Rhino, which is amazing stuff. But he had a precarious relationship with Steve Stone. I got to know Steve, and we played golf together with my dad, and they had fun together. A lot of people don't realize they were both traded for each other, right? Steve was with a pack that came in. But there was a time, and they got along, though. But there was a moment where they pushed some of that fun too far, and that, you don't realize that. Yeah, he was, and I'll talk about this to you, whether we put this in or not. Man, we were in Houston, and when I just did This Old Cub, and I started traveling with my dad, and so the Cubs let me go on the road trips, and this was even the year after, because I was helping them and following up on stuff for This Old Cub, but I was still doing things, and we were in Houston, and at the fourth season, the Cubs won a big game. It was with Dusty was the manager, like 2004 or 5, after 3, with the big season of 3, and we were all in the bar, and everyone was. It was a good time, and a kid came up to my dad, a guy in his 20s, I'd say, said, "Hey, can I see your World Series ring, Mr. Santo?"
Oh, come on.
No. And
Did Steve put him up to it?
Steven chipped it, kidding around, right? And everyone went quiet because my dad went quiet. That's when they saw a serious side. Like, you can push him so far, now you're pushing him into a place that is not good. And
Yeah.
So what happened from that is, right there, my dad, and I was sitting right next to my dad, and I look up at this guy, and I'm like, "Who is this? Are you serious?" And, no. And he stayed there. "Let me see your World Series ring, Mr. Santo."
Oh, man.
And my dad, hey, I said, "Get out of here right now," to the kid. Get the hell out of here. My dad stands up. It's over. Boom. I'm out of here. I follow him I follow him with his bag, like I did, and I follow him up to his room. He's taking his cane, and he's hitting everything in the hallways up to his room. And everyone went quiet in the bar. So now I get him up to his room, and he is pissed. And now I'm pissed because I'm part of my dad. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what do? My emotions start taking over, and I go down to the bar. I pick up that kid, and I throw him out of the Four Seasons Hotel into the parking lot,
Oh,
right past Moises Soylu, walking in. I lost it. So then I'm thinking, well, maybe I'm being shipped home after this. I don't know what's going. I just turned into Ron Santo, and it's because I felt his pain, man. I felt and I remember that I went up to the next when he woke up in the morning. I had to tell him what I did because everyone saw me do it. You know, the bar was packed, and I couldn't grab Steve or Chip, which I wanted to, because it just I never it never really the relationship never you know I never really talked to Steve after that. He kidded about it the next day, like, oh, you threw some small guy. I'm like, Steve, it wasn't about that, man. And I'm not saying I'm proud of it, but I'm just like, that crossed the line, man. And people don't know, like, he took the jokes too.
well, I could tell you this. There were a lot of bus rides, especially the long ones. Imagine a trip. Imagine a bus ride from New York to Philly, or vice versa, or maybe in from the Denver airport, which is it's like what, an hour at least to downtown. Those kinds of things. And in the back of the bus is me and Ron and Steve and Brenly and
Mhm.
Brenneman and Arnie and maybe the PR people, because we were usually on the coach's bus, or coach and manager's bus. So we were all in the back. Supposed to be a separation of church and state there. So those those battles were every single day, and they were sometimes for hours. And it was usually very funny. It was usually lighthearted. It was usually enjoyable. Everybody got beat up, and everybody had their turn to beat somebody else. It's like being in a locker room. It's just, guys busting balls and having a good time. But there were times when the line was crossed, and there were things that hurt him for sure. I mean, again, he's an emotional guy who still suffered from the wounds of his past, and
Mhm.
those wounds were never going to heal.
Mhm.
And there were times he took the jokes really well, but there were times that he didn't. And you got to know where the line is, and you got to know when enough is enough. Just got
Yeah,
to know. And
yeah. I was, and he did.
and I'm
And
stunned. I'm actually stunned by that. I don't know if I knew that story.
hmm,
I don't.
yeah, yeah.
That's not funny.
They
It's
let me
just
they
not.
let me back on the plane and the bus, which is good, and because they knew what it was, and and that was it. Okay, it was dropped, which I'm glad it was, and thankful for that. The thing is, though, I even ran into it. Like, I remember my dad would always talk about Sandy Koufax's no hitter, right, the perfect game,
Yeah.
and he would joke about that, how Joey Malfitano thought he got the signs, arms out, curveball, arms down, fastball when he's in the stretch. Well, he never got in the stretch, Joe, so we couldn't pick up those signs, right? So my dad would always tell that story, and he'd always tell the story where Beckert would, he would hit second, and every time Becker would hit, if he popped up or something, my dad would say, "Hey, what's he got, Roomy?" He would always ask Becker what he has when he's facing a new pitcher or a Koufax on a hot day. Well, Becker goes down in 3 pitches, right? When he never strikes out, comes back to the dugout. My dad's, getting into the on deck circle, and he goes, "Hey, Roomy, what's he got?" He ain't got shit. I was, oh shit, all right, all right. He gets up there. My dad's like, he didn't even stride. 3 pitch, boom, boom, boom. Goes back to the dugout, and Becker's like, hey man, he's laughing on the bench. I didn't see it either, man. So the thing is, though, he would tell that story all the time. I remember we went to San Diego one time, and he told that story to a bunch of Cub fans when I was on a road trip in San Diego. I would go from LA to San Diego, and everyone gets a big kick out of it, right? And then
Yeah.
the fans leave, and it's just me and him. And I turn to my dad and I go, Dad, did you ever hit Koufax? Dude, he looked at me like with these eyes, like, did I ever hit Koufax? Who the hell do you think you're talking to? I hit 5 home runs off of Koufax. Took his cane, hit the chair, took off, right? Like, you're drinking too much beer. And it's like, boom, I hit a chord. Like, I hit this chord. And I remember like, oh my God, what did I just say? And I'm thinking, oh man, what did I say that for? Of course you hit Koufax. So I go up into the room, and we had adjoining rooms, and I would go out and smoke a cigar on my patio balcony, and I could see into his room. And I'm pissed now that he got on me. I'm like, what the hell, man? So I go up, I'm on the balcony, I'm smoking a cigar, and I'm pissed. I'm like, oh. And I see him taking off his legs, going,
yeah.
You all right, put down your cigar, go in there and tell him you're sorry. That was a foolish frickin' question. And he said, all right. He nodded his head. I understand. But that's my dad. There's something percolating there, man.
I
it's a
got
force
that.
field that keeps him rolling.
That look, the big eyes, and that look that you got in the bar that night. I got that a couple times. I don't remember. I couldn't even tell you why. Who knows, right? Who knows? But you don't want that look. You do not want that look.
No, you don't, man.
And that was when he was still in, pretty good health. Those early years when he joined the Cubs, he was in pretty good health. And he was a bear of a man. I mean, he was huge.
His hands, his forearms.
His hands were huge, and he was like a linebacker. Even the man hadn't worked out in 30 years or something.
Right.
He still looked like a linebacker. Right. That was not a look you wanted.
No, it was not, man.
But I know that look, and it's bad.
Yeah,
it's bad.
And I just got to say, like, he did take a lot. Like, he was able to have fun with anyone. And people would joke, and they don't know that there is this volcano down below that's moving them, man. And and I got to say, Barry, last thing I want to say here, when he passed and you came to the celebration that we had after the funeral at Harry Carey's, you really brought some light to us, man. It was so good that you came to that and made me feel great. My brother, we just had a ball, and that's the kind of guy you are, man. You just there's just a natural way of like truth in you that come on.
Well, don't you think you guys did the same for me though? I mean, I was in a bad way. I felt bad about it for a long time. And even after the Hall of Fame, I felt bad about it for a long time. The guy just endured so much. So that day, that was a hard day. But once we got to the bar and started drinking, it became a better day.
Right.
And then how about you, me, and Ronnie up on the bar doing toasts to number 10?
Oh God.
Do you remember that? We got pictures of we got pictures.
They were great, man. That was nice, man. It really
That was the day that it was important that I had taken a cab to the train downtown, and a cab everywhere I went, and then the train home and a cab home, because I really let it go that day. It was necessary. I would say you guys did as much for me as I did for anybody else that day.
Barry, it's so good to talk to you, man. I mean, you're seriously one of the best guys I know. And I know we don't, older we get, we're kind of staying home in our places, but it's so great to have you here and to reconnect. And I hope we see more of each other, man, moving forward.
Yeah. Thank you for all the kind words. I feel the same way about you. I hope we can run into each other sooner rather than later. Thanks, brother. You're the best.
All right, Barry. Talk to you soon. Love you, pal.
Take care.
See you, brother.
This is a Ron Santo moment brought to you by Honesty Entertainment. In a 1967 Seattle newspaper, it says, "The Prince of Pizza, Seattle superstar Ron Santo, wants to manage Seattle's Major League Baseball team. Not right away. He's only 27 and still superstarring for the Chicago Cubs. He said yesterday, 'When I'm through playing, I like to manage in Seattle. I think Seattle's acquisition of an American League franchise is a wonderful thing. It deserves big league ball. Personally, though, I had hoped the National League would get in there. What a thrill to play in my hometown.'" That Santoid was brought to you by Honesty Entertainment.
I'm going to crackerjack call my nephew Sam, my sister Linda's oldest boy, and haven't talked to him in a little bit, so looking forward to do that. Here we go.
Crackerjack.
Hi, call is being recorded. Sorry I couldn't reach the phone. Leave your name and number, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks.
Sam, are you there? Sammy.
Hey, Jeff, what's up?
Being recorded.
Hey, you're my crackerjack.
What was that?
You ignored.
Oh, I am?
Yeah, you are, man. Been trying to call
you. Sorry, I was making some breakfast. I apologize.
No problem, buddy. How you doing, man? It's been a while. Haven't talked to you in a bit. What's going on?
Yeah. Nothing much. Just hanging out, enjoying a lazy Sunday.
All right, good. Well, I got you as my crackerjack, man. I want to ask you a couple of questions.
Okay. Am I live?
You're not live. I mean, right? It will be live eventually.
I got
you know. So yeah, what you're saying matters for sure. So hey, listen. Your mom told me we were talking about Grandpa when he would go to your Little League games, and. Is it true that the coach one time called you over while you were up at bat at third base, brought you down there to tell you how to hit the pitch, and then you went back to the plate, and Grandpa was behind the screen there and called you over, and you went over to him, and he said, "Don't listen to
that guy." Yeah, 100%, all the time. Because you would see him doing his like movements or whatever, like how he wanted me to turn or like get my hands through, and he's like, "No, you're fine. Don't do that."
That's classic, man. Listen, how old were you when Grandpa passed away?
What was it, 2010? So I was 11.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And you're 24 now, right?
Yep. Almost 25.
Holy cow. You remember much about that and everything?
I do. Believe it or not, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because you were really close with him. Grandpa kind of treated you like, okay, he's got a second chance at trying to raise a male. What was that like, man, your relationship with him? Talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as I said, still very young, but, I mean, it was definitely still felt special. Still to this day, almost feels like the closest relationship I've had with anyone, to be honest. Wow. Just inseparable. It felt like, I mean, living right next door, doing everything together, surely helped. And then growing up during that time, I mean, I helped him a lot with that too, but absolutely, yeah, super special. Nothing but fun, but laughs the whole entire time as well. So yeah, definitely, super grateful for that.
Of course, man. Of course. Yeah, he adored you, man. And you live next door, which is a great setup. You guys literally, there was a gate that you would just walk. They made a gate from your house to his house. So
yeah, right. Knocked down the wall.
I mean, yeah, they knocked down the wall. It was amazing. And so the first 6 years of your life, you were with him so much of the time. I mean, before you went to school and stuff.
Absolutely.
What's one of the things that you remember most about Grandpa?
Honestly, I think it'd be. Because, I mean, like you said, being out with him and not going to school, that he would just take me out. We'd just be hanging out all day, go to get his haircut with him, go to the grocery store. It was just like the way he treated everyone. Honestly, everyone was the exact same, regardless if they knew him or not, and if he impacted him or not with JDRF and everything he did with that. I think just treating everyone the exact same was something I really took and thought was super cool from him.
Wow. I remember when I was doing This Old Cub, and people who have seen This Old Cub, you're in it. How old are you in that? Yeah. Were you like 4 or 5?
Yeah, well, it came out in 2003 originally, right? I had to be 4.
Yeah, 2004. 2004. Yeah, 2004.
Okay,
yeah.
4 or 5 then.
But I shot you at 2000. Yeah, probably I filmed you at 2003 for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you were.
I mean, I was still swinging lefty in that video, so that was way young. Because he switched me to a righty. I was like 5 or 6.
Yeah, you could hit lefty, man. You could hit from both sides.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool. I wonder why you didn't keep hitting lefty.
Yeah, I don't know. I never knew that either. It's definitely a good question. I'd love to ask.
Yeah, man, and it was something else, and to see that relationship from my perspective was special too, because he was so, not that he wasn't busy when you were born, because he did
Right.
he did have the broadcasting job, but when he was in Arizona, he was there every day with you, which is really cool. Really cool.
Absolutely.
Let me 4. Do you have any regrets at 24?
Do I?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a pretty loaded question.
No, it's a heavy question, but it's a loaded question. But that's kind of our theme in the opening. And just wondering about that.
Yeah, I mean, just recently, I wish I took schooling a lot more seriously. To be honest, a few years out of school now and living in the real world, and trying to find my career opportunity, and that's been very difficult. The biggest thing I'm probably struggling with right now, just wishing I got more focused and narrowed down my studies, found something I was more passionate about, and didn't, try to just scrape by in school and couldn't wait to graduate and get out of there. Just took it a little bit more seriously.
Yeah. It's weird because I think when I turned 24, I could look back at that. That's a tough time,
Yeah.
Because you do have to make a decision of like where you're going for the, rest of your life in a way. It's very meaningful,
Absolutely.
your decisions at that age. Maybe not so much coming out of college because you're still, I don't know if I want to work or whatnot.
Everything out, right?
Yeah. But it's great that you're aware of that, though, man. I kind of felt the same thing. I was lost in baseball, but what was your? Well, you had a lot going on, man. So I got to say, you've done great, pal.
Thank you.
Where are you at now? Right, you got some big decisions. Got some good things happening for you, though. Now, right?
Yeah, I'm interviewing with some new opportunities. Trying to get into a new sales position in the medical field that could hopefully be a strong opportunity that I'd be, super ecstatic for.
And I like the direction you're going, man. You're taking control. That's cool. What's the future feel like for you?
It feels promising. I was talking to my mom about this. Normally when I'm in this position of uncertainty, my anxiety, mental health kind of gets the best of me, but I feel good right now. I'm not anxious. I'm just kind of going with the flow with everything. I don't know. It feels bright, that's for sure. But yeah, feeling good about it.
Well, that's good, man.
Yeah.
Now, are you staying in Arizona? Is that where you see yourself? Unless something comes up?
Yes. We'll see. The summer's coming around, and that's typically the time where I tell myself I can't do it anymore. I got to get out of here. But it's obviously easy right now when it's 72 degrees and sunny in the beginning of March. But we'll see. I have been looking at, I'm open to opportunities, around the States. I'm open to international work as well. Figure I take the time while I'm young in my 20s to kind of live my life and experience some new things,
Yeah, exactly. Now let me ask you about your baseball career playing in high school. What was that like for you? Did you have pressure on you being a grandson?
I did, yeah, initially for sure. Especially getting cut freshman year, from the team. That was, gut wrenching to me. However, I think I found what really helped me was I started playing soccer as well, pick that up again. And then that allowed me to get faster, get quicker, have more endurance, and then come back into baseball. Honestly, I don't want to say not caring as much, but kind of a chip on my shoulder with it, and then kind of just going with the flow and just having more fun out there with it. I knew I had soccer as well, and I was just enjoying the time out there with my friends, and it, paid massive dividends for me and ended up playing, the rest of my career there and going to state and varsity year. But playing with all my best friends, it was just really just having a great time because I knew I wasn't going to be playing in college, wasn't going to be playing professionally, So just trying to have as much fun as I could out there and ended up playing, much better.
Yeah, you guys had I watched a couple of your games, man, and would go out when I was there, and you guys had a good baseball program, Horizon.
Yeah, absolutely.
you know, just and a good bunch of guys, man, that you still pretty close with, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. They're all still some of my best friends today. Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, what was the pressure like? Well, what kind of pressure did you put on yourself? What was it that bothered you the most?
I think it was just not being. I mean, like you said, we were with a really good program, so we had a lot of great athletes out there. A lot of big D1 kids. My best friend Evan included. I think it's more the pressure just not being on that standard with them, not being able to play up to their level, knowing, kind of my backstory with Grandpa, and if it came so easy to him, how come it was coming so easy to me, and knowing that it doesn't work like that, kind of more so like that. But then again, I quickly learned like that's not how it works. So, and that I had a different path set for me and a different set of skills set for me. So, just overcoming that and learning,
what do you think if he was alive during that time of like when you were making that transition to high school? Wonder what that would have been like.
Yeah, I think I would have had a lot more support for sure with it. And not that I didn't to begin with, but
right.
And then he himself would have taken that pressure off, I believe, 100% right then and there as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's what's strange is I look back to when Ronnie and I played, growing up, and he was so busy, but it's just kind of like the mental approach is the biggest approach to baseball, that you just come to recognize, right? And same with your brother Spencer, and I think, it's like, and my dad was kind of giving you that mental kind of tutelage, which was great. And I think we kind of always, at least I wanted that, right? Because you wonder, like, God, how does he get past all those barriers, right? When pressure pop, the 40,000 people, there's just so much there, right? But I guess it's kind of hard to translate that to someone else, when you get down to it.
Absolutely. 100%.
But don't you feel like you figure that out as you get a little older and you understand it a little more, and you're like, oh man, if I just maybe had a couple more years to understand that, because you're a great athlete. You play golf and you're a softball. You guys got a great softball team, and it's kind of how it rolls, right? You kind of wish, give me that bat again. Let me go for it again.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I wish for sure.
Right.
Yeah,
and
the 56-year-olds in softball are giving me some false confidence, but absolutely.
Right, yeah, guys my age. That's funny, man. It's what are you going to do? It's one of those things that hey, we love the game. It's such a part of our like family life, right? You can't like ignore it.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. So, I just tried to go to a spring training game the other day, the Cubs game, right? And I just asked Ronnie for some tickets. And then next thing I know, we are sitting right above the third base dugout. Like all these people are coming up to me. It's just, still very much a part of us. And honored for that.
Yeah. Well, how do the Cubs look, by the way, this year?
We're going to have to see. I mean, spring training is always tough. They got split squads. They got a bunch of younger guys up there playing with them.
Right.
They were getting bounced around by the Rockies, though, who did not look too good themselves. So we're going to have to see.
Who knows? I think it's going to be exciting. Was Chris Bryant playing?
No, he wasn't. No. I was hoping he would be, but no.
Yeah. Did you read that article on him talk about regret? Well, he kind of regrets that he left Chicago. Isn't that crazy? Even hits those guys, man.
For sure.
It's crazy, the decisions. That's why, like going forward in your life now, Sam, you're 24. You know about that now, and that's great to have. I don't know if I knew that at 20, but the choices are big from here on out. Where you go,
absolutely.
And I think also in who you hang out with. Going forward. Yeah,
absolutely.
So what field you get into, man? Well, I can't wait to see you, Sam, when I get out there. We're coming out next weekend for.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, for the event, they're inducting him into Spring Training Hall of Fame.
I believe that's what it is. Yes.
Cactus League Hall of Fame. And who are they playing on Tuesday? It's the 12th, March 12th, Tuesday. It's a night game. Who are they playing?
That's the question I don't have the answer to, unfortunately.
Well, I'll see you soon, man. And you're going to throw out the first pitch, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Awesome.
I'm looking forward to it. Should be good.
All right, Sam. I'm really looking forward to seeing you, pal. All right, great talking with you, and we'll catch up when I get into town.
All right, sounds
Love
great.
You,
thank you, Jeff.
All right,
love you too.
See man.
Talk
Bye.
soon.
All right,
bye.
Later, bud.
Thanks for listening to our show. Special thanks to our cool crackerjacks, Scott Nelson, Jim McCauley, Debbie Foley, Sherry Matarisi, Terry Rankin-Gurovitz, Terry O'Brien, Gary Tallman, and Anne-Marie Pascoul. Now, I hope we get some more cool crackerjacks. We're going to be doing a lot this year. We're heading out to Arizona this coming week, and they're celebrating, honoring my dad. He'll get into the Spring Training Cactus League Hall of Fame, and that's on March 12th, Tuesday. We'll be at the game and passing out some cards. I'm also going to interview my mom for a clubhouse tape, and we'll have some really cool clubhouse tapes coming down the road here. So become a crackerjack. I think you'll enjoy it. You won't regret it.
And thanks to all of our subscribers, because you can be also in the Peanut Gallery, and you can just subscribe on Apple Podcasts. So thanks to all of our subscribers. If you want to support the show and be a cool crackerjack, subscribe on our Patreon page by clicking the link below this episode, or go to the Patreon tab on our website, www.peanutspopcornandcrackerjacks.com.
Remember to click the follow button for the next episode and leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
And don't hesitate to write, give us suggestions, tell us how you're liking the show. Email jeff.ppcpodcast@gmail.com.
For my closing quote, if you don't set goals, you can't regret not reaching them. Yogi Berra.
Toodaloo!
SantoFilms.com, the place to buy This Old Cub DVDs, posters, and This Old Cub t-shirts. Get yourself one now at SantoFilms.com.